Hello, and welcome to Work Your Passion, a podcast dedicated to creativity and passion. I'm your host, Rocco Jeppy. Today's guest is Melanie Hagan, a Baltimore-based artist who has found ways to live her passion to the fullest. One of her most recent works of art, Coalmine, was featured in 2 Maryland art galleries last year, and she's creating new works as you listen to this episode. Equal parts firecracker and eternal goofball, her words, not mine. Melanie gets her personality from her mother and father. She's a wonderfully creative young artist with an infectious laugh that will light up any room. This is the first time she's done an interview, and I'm not only grateful that it's on my show, but proud of her for doing so. So sit back with your favorite beverage as I present Work Your Passion, Episode 3, the one with Melanie Hagan. Hello, Melanie, and thank you for joining me on the Work Your Passion podcast. I'm so happy to have you today.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. One of my favorite, but what I consider one of the best interviewers in the last several decades, the late, great James Lipton, host of Inside the Actor's Studio, would start off each one of his interviews by saying, let's start at the beginning. So borrowing from Mr. Lipton, that's where we're going to start today. So where were you born?
I was born and raised in Maryland. I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. in Olney, so not too far from Baltimore.
Excellent. And do you have any siblings?
I have a younger brother. I was an only child until I was 13 when we adopted my younger brother when he was 8.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So along those lines, tell me a little bit about your parents.
My parents are incredible. My mother is a firecracker. She is one of the strongest women I've ever known, obviously. Beautiful, kind, incredibly strong. My father is an eternal goofball. He is very compassionate, very silly, and a wonderful man. I'm very fortunate.
So what kind of traits do you get? What do you take from your parents? Do you take a little something from each one of them?
I am the perfect meld from both. I'm very goofy like my father. I hope I'm just as compassionate and strong as both of them. I've learned a lot from them.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit more. Talk about your childhood.
My childhood was wonderful. Like I said, I was an only child till I was 13. My parents worked very hard. I spent a lot of time by myself. I didn't have very many friends. I was kind of a strange bird. So that's probably where a lot of this art comes from. But it was great. We were always really close. My mom actually got diagnosed with cancer when I was in high school. So that was terrifying, but she, like I said, strong lady, persevered and kicked its butt, and it kind of just brought us all together even closer.
It's great. You can learn a lot from adversity, tragedy, things of that nature. And yeah, it sounds like, I mean, just in your description of your parents, it sounds like you all have learned something from that and have come out, it sounds like, better on the other side.
100%. I hate to say it, but it's almost the best thing that happened to us. We all learned a lot.
What was it like when you're 13 years old and you find out, or you kind of knew already that not only are you going to have a brother, but you're going to have an adopted brother? What was that like, that whole time in your life?
I was extremely excited. I was an only child, so it's kind of more of an interesting story than just adopting. He is my little cousin who we adopted. He became my little brother. Just some family issues happened, and he and his sister got separated from their mother, my aunt, and we didn't want that to happen. The whole family didn't want that to happen. We didn't want to lose them. So my aunt and uncle in New Jersey took in I call her my sister, Brandy, and we took in my brother, Patrick, and I was thrilled. They, of course, asked me if I was happy about it, and I never didn't want a sibling, so I was excited. Even though it started late and I was 13 and he was 8, I was pumped. It was difficult, but I was excited.
That's amazing. That is truly amazing. It's always interesting to me to find out, the backstories, the histories, the backgrounds of our different creators that we have on the show. And because I think it gives us a little glimpse into what, of course, we'll talk about later, your creativeness. It gives us a little glimpse into that. And I really appreciate you for sharing that.
Of course.
So tell me, when you hear creativity, what does creativity mean to you, and how do you express that in your art?
Creativity to me is just being able to see beyond what lies in front of you. Whether that be, putting something on an empty canvas, molding something or changing the shape of something that already exists, uniquely solving a problem, manipulating food. I mean, there's so many different ways to be creative and to apply that. And for me, I mean, I suppose it's just starting from nothing and creating space on something flat. I'm mostly a painter, but it's mostly something from nothing for me.
When did you really start getting interested in art, and why are you so attracted to doing it?
It definitely started when I was a kid. And honestly, it's something that's been a part of me for so long that I can't necessarily pinpoint how or why. It's just, maybe it was because I was an only child. I spent a lot of time drawing, making puppets for myself and puppet shows, things like that. I don't know, maybe it was the time on my hands, but it just was something I always enjoyed, whether it was, realism as a kid, trying to draw my own self, or, I drew houses for kids in school when I was a kid too. I don't know, it's just always been such a big part of my life.
Do you remember any instance or a time or something that stands out to you that initially piqued your interest in art?
Not necessarily. I was a part of like an after school program that we did a lot of art, and a lot of the kids just tortured this poor woman. The art teachers in elementary school, big shout out to you guys, because kids can be rough. I mean, in high school as well. But this woman, I just found such solace in creating with her. And I honestly can't even remember her name, and that's tragic.
It's okay. She knows.
She knows. I hope she does.
So you mentioned mostly you paint. Talk about overall the different types of art that you do.
So generally mostly painting. I love any time I can get my hands on clay. I'm not very good at it, but I think it's fun to build with your hands. Mostly acrylic painting though for me, on canvas, on boards. I had done woodwork in the past. I mean, in school I did metal work, but again, not very well.
And were you a fan, or are you a fan of Bob Ross?
I think everybody is, right? I never really watched it, but like, what a sweetheart.
So talk about your study of art. Start with high school. Take me kind of from high school to college, and what that journey, that transition was like for you.
Okay. High school definitely solidified that art was definitely what I wanted to do with my education. Did it all 4 years, different levels. My senior year of high school, I got chosen to do an internship with the National Gallery of Art in DC for a summer, which was really cool. We did some art there, but we mostly got to like learn about how the museums worked. Mm-hmm. So being chosen for that based off my art was very special for me. And applying to schools was challenging because that was about around the time my mom was diagnosed with cancer. So I didn't know what to do, but I ended up at University of Delaware in their fine arts department with a drawing and painting focus. Did that for 2 years. I absolutely adored the art program. It was wonderful. I learned so much. The teachers there are fabulous. That's where I did like word work and metal shop and whatnot, and where I really got into abstract art. And then my sophomore year, I ended up transferring to Towson, closer to friends and family, and plus tuition is ridiculous. But I finished up there, and I was also very pleased with the art department there. Another group of fabulous teachers. I got really fortunate with all the art teachers that I had in college.
That's great. That's excellent. So what point did you realize, art was something that was more than just a class that you had to take in school, that you had a talent that you could see yourself doing something with it?
And I don't know I don't know when it started that I felt like I could do something with it. It was just something that I enjoyed and I couldn't imagine focusing on anything else. I never wanted to go to school to, I don't know, like, didn't want to be a lawyer, didn't want to do this. I just wanted to focus on the thing that I enjoyed the most for the longest part of my life. And I just wanted to get better at it. I suppose in college was when I started to think like, maybe I could do something more with this. Nobody really goes into fine art thinking, hey man, this is where the big bucks are.
No, that's certainly true. It is not a get rich career path major, that's for sure.
Nope.
When it comes to doing your art, laying it out, actually putting brush to canvas, hands to clay, and then displaying your art, that whole process. Do you have any fears when it comes to all of that?
I honestly, I used to. I overworked art for a long time, and sometimes you just like it's tough because you never ruin a piece, but there is that fear that you're going to, and you just have to push past that and kind of let the paint do what it's gonna do. That was my biggest lesson, was learning that I couldn't screw it up because it was mine and it's gonna do whatever it was anyway.
And is there anything in particular, any kind of tradition or superstition that you have that helps you push past that fear?
At this point now, it's knowing when I need to step away from it. So I'm always kind of working on multiple pieces. If I start to get stuck at a point, I just know that I need to like lay off or stare at it for a while, until something speaks to me. But like, so there's other times where I just go for it, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but I can fix it. That's all part of it. That for me, it's all about the process, which is what I enjoy the most.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different from being a writer and author. Sometimes you really hit your groove and you're going pretty well, and then other times you need to shove it in a desk drawer for 6 months and come back to it later.
Absolutely.
Where do you think creativity comes from overall for yourself? Just kind of a blanket statement, and then you personally.
I think everybody is creative. It's just knowing what to do with it, I guess. Where it comes from is whatever inspires you. And for me, it's experience, travel, people, connections.
And we're kind of getting into this with this next question. But what do you love most about doing art? What inspires you?
It's freeing. It just feels like a big part of my identity. Like I said, what inspires me is mostly, it's at this point in my life, it's travel based, but a lot of the sketching I do is just something to fill time. And I don't know, that's a difficult question because it's just ingrained in me.
I would imagine it's kind of, a lot of it is spur of the moment, like you may be on a hike, you may be on vacation, you may, those different things. And so I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong and elaborate for me here, but in the eyes and the mind of an artist, anytime you're out and about, you're kind of recruiting and on the lookout for something that will pique your interest and inspire you to do art.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and that's the beauty of a photograph as well. Sometimes it's like if you don't have a sketchbook with you, but like remembering a moment, whether it's just internalizing it or capturing it in a photo, a sound, a person, anything.
How do you define success? And I kind of use that as a very broad term. I don't necessarily think that means the same thing to everyone. So, whether that's in your life, in the art that you do, how do you define success?
I'd say success to me is complete, like seeing something through from start to finish. It's not necessarily what the outcome is at the end, but just having done that, whether it's big or small, time-wise, whatever, just being able to do it from start to finish.
Do you think failure is necessary for success?
Absolutely, because sometimes when you do something from start to finish, the end is tragic. It might not always work out, but you did it, and you didn't get let down. And failure is huge.
It's really good. Talk about what you do to pay the bills, what you do day in and day out, and how this contributes to your artistic pursuits and vice versa.
So I'm in the restaurant industry. I bartend currently. I've done just about everything in the restaurant world. It allows me a lot of freedom, time wise, and like, if I want to travel, I can bend and move my shifts. I love the fact that I meet so many people. I really enjoy working with all different kinds of people, whether it's customers or people I work with, people I work for, being a part of a community, seeing people on the street. I find inspiration also that.
That's excellent. So now I think we're going to get to a portion of this interview that many that are listening today are ready for and want to hear about. And that's talking directly about your art. We're going to talk about one piece right now in particular, and that's a piece that, if I'm not mistaken, is your most recent piece that you have up, and that's called Coalmine. In 2021, it was on display at the Luancara Gallery in Baltimore and at the Laurel Art Guild in Laurel, Maryland. So start, if you would, please, by explaining the painting to us, the size, the paint, the technique, composition, those types of things for Coalmine.
So Coalmine is an acrylic painting, acrylic and mixed media. It's 36 inches by 36 inches, so 3 feet by 3 feet. I love squares. I don't know why. So it's sizable, but it's a size I work with often. Yeah, like I said, acrylic mixed media.
Go ahead and tell us about, what the thought process was with this painting, what the inspiration was behind Coalmine.
So like I said, like I'm a process painter, so sometimes it's just starting and seeing where it goes. Coalmine was a COVID baby. So, COVID was tough for everyone, losing jobs and having a lot of time on your hands. I really thought that I would spend a lot of time doing art, but I just didn't find the nature of the world inspiring. I kind of got in a big creative rut for a little bit there. But things started reopening, people started moving around. I ended up one of the very first people I met during COVID that was new to me in my circle, was a huge inspiration. Very interesting character, very different from me, very similar to me in a lot of ways. And just like getting to know this person really sparked a lot of fires. So I started painting, and Coalmine was a breath of fresh air.
It's really good. I definitely want to touch on something you said in that answer, and that was you didn't find the nature of the world inspiring. We've moved on from that moment in time a little bit now. Looking back at that and where you sit today, do you find the experience that you went through from then till now, is that inspiring?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was hard. It was challenging for everybody in a lot of different ways, but I think there was a lot of growth and self-discovery in that. Hopefully positive for a lot of people, but also, really challenging, and hopefully people could get over that. But for me personally, it was a good journey. Happy to be farther away from the beginning of it all, but it was an experience worth having.
Excellent. Are there any other pieces of art, older things you're working on now, otherwise that you would like to discuss?
There is a piece that I'm working on now that I'm really happy with at the moment. Space wise, I've created a nice space with it, but I've had to put it down for a little bit just so I can kind of focus on something else. Like I said, I need to kind of keep a bunch of things in my periphery so I can not get burnt out on one piece. I'm very proud of a lot of the other pieces that I've had and sold. One of the piece before Coalmine was another one I was really proud of that was called Over the Counter Conversation, which can be seen on my Instagram. But that was another piece I was really proud of as well.
You want to elaborate on that one a little bit? The title anyway sounds really cool.
That one, the title came after the fact. That one kind of difficult to explain without seeing it, but I mean it's just a play with space and shapes, color and depth. This one was kind of inspired by one of my best friends, Michael. We have a lot of ridiculous kitchen conversations that kind of go on forever and ever about really ridiculous things. So that was kind of the inspiration for the title. Doesn't necessarily have to do anything with the piece, but it's very suiting for me because it's all over the place.
So here's a question I have regarding that. And this is a question that a lot of writers and authors get in that world. And for you, does the title of the piece come first and you work off of that? Or does the piece get started and then somewhere along the lines, you give it a title, or can it be either one?
It can be either one, but for me, it's almost never the first thing. I try not to think of anything or when I'm doing it aside from just like feeling, but often the title comes afterwards, and it's usually something that's just goofy or something off the top of my head. and try to keep it broad enough so it doesn't make anybody feel a certain way about the piece.
Good answer. Thank you. What motivates you both in life and when you're doing your art?
I would say experience motivates me the most. Connections with people, music, traveling, mostly connections with people, though, I'd say.
What do you think is a stereotype or stereotypes of artists that is just simply not true?
I think that when people first figure out that you're an artist or they hear something about artists, they think of classical art, of like a pristine replica of nature or a scene or something. It's just much bigger than that.
You talk about your love and your passion for doing abstract art. And I think anyone that has taken a look at your Instagram or had a conversation with you, that's abundantly apparent. Do you think abstract is something that, I mean, with any subject matter in being creative, I'm sure there are ebbs and flows throughout history. But do you think abstract art is something that's kind of making a comeback right now?
I do think so. It seems more accessible maybe to people, and it grows. You can start by just putting something down. It's the most, I don't want to say it's the most accessible form of art, but like just putting something down and then working with it and getting over that fear, like that you don't have to do something perfect, because what is perfect anyways? Mm-hmm. So I think it is, and I hope it is. Everyone should try it.
What is currently your biggest challenge as a young artist?
Exposure, exposure and time, because like you do have to pay the bills, and making time and finding the motivation to do it. And sometimes it's overflowing, and sometimes life gets in the way.
That is definitely true. Mm-hmm. As evident with this podcast series, I wish I could have started it sooner, but as you said, life gets in the way.
Life gets in the way.
Absolutely. We all have those things that we need to do to pay the bills. And so, it's great to sit here and have conversations with people like yourself, but also got to get up and go punch the clock, so to say, and get those bills paid so that, we have a roof to use with which to record this podcast.
Indeed. A space in which to paint.
Exactly. So we're going to head into the home stretch now. Not too much left for you to answer. You've been a really good guest here. I just have a couple of quotes here now that I want to get your take on. I try and do this with all of my guests and pick out good quotes for them. So hopefully we can go somewhere with the two that I have selected for you today. So the first one is by the American poet, essayist, and philosopher, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Every artist was first an amateur. What comes to your mind when you hear that quote?
I mean, in everything you do, there's always the first time you do it. Mm-hmm. So if you think that amateur is like the very first time that you do something, then there's that. It might come out poor the first time, or perhaps you're just born incredible and it's perfect the first time, but it is your first, and it's whatever your intention is too. So every artist is an amateur at first. Everyone's an amateur at first in whatever skill they decide.
You said something there that I think in one way, shape, or form has come up in just about every episode that I've done. And that's the word intention. How do you think intention plays into not just you as an artist staying on this topic of amateur, but How important is the intention of what you're getting into?
I think the intention is everything. I mean, for me, it's knowing that I'm just going to put myself out there into something and not necessarily knowing what the end goal is going to be. So my intention is just to do it. And like I said, to try to see it to its completion, however it gets completed.
Excellent. The second quote is a little bit more directly related to you today. It's by the French artist. You may have heard of him, Henri Matisse.
Oh, of course.
And his, as anyone that knows Matisse, I believe, from everything that I've seen, man, a few words, big action.
Mm-hmm.
And his quote is just 3 words: creativity takes courage. What do you suppose he meant by this?
It certainly does. You have to, like, putting yourself out there takes a lot of courage. So knowing that, especially if you're not sure how something is going to end or how it's going to go, but still doing it anyways, it's huge. That's courageous. And I think he nailed it, dude.
Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
A little bit of both. I would say I'm an introvert to myself, and a lot of people who would know me would scoff at that, and because I'm rather flamboyant at the same time. I'm all over the place. It just depends on the day or my mood, I suppose.
And how does that help your artwork and what you're trying to accomplish?
It's helpful because the days that I am introverted, I can really focus and like live internally and put everything into that. The extrovert part, I mean, it kind of helps me just kind of explode on the canvas. So both are very important, and you probably, depending on the piece, you could see areas in which I'm focusing and whatnot, and areas where I'm just going wild.
Do you find that, because I assume there, a lot of artists and you have artist friends, but do you find that there's any one that dominates it? Are there more introverted artists? Are there more extroverted artists? Or are there more folks that feel like you do, like they're a little bit of both?
I would say there's definitely a little. There's. I mean, if you think of a quintessential artist, you think of like, especially like abstract or more modern. Maybe you can think of something outrageous or somebody who just, like, I don't know, kind of explodes. I would say it's just everyone. I would say that it's a perfect blend of both.
Well, my final question for you today, Melanie, is one that I think is simple, and hopefully it is, because I'm really interested to hear your answer here. What brings you the most joy and truly makes you happy?
Happiness itself. Honestly, being in the moment where I can witness somebody else feeling happiness, or creating a space where somebody feels joy and comfort. I really feed off of other people. And when I feel comfort and joy is when I feel the happiness. So it kind of all perpetuates for me.
Excellent. I think that's a great way to end our conversation here today. Melanie Hagan, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I wish you luck in all your future endeavors, and look forward to seeing more of your artwork.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Work Your Passion, Episode 3. To learn more about Melanie's artwork, check out her links in the show notes. You can visit her website at melaniehagan.com, follow her on Instagram at Melanie Hagan, or shoot her an email at melaniePhagan@gmail.com. To be the first to know about future episodes of the Work Your Passion podcast, sign up for the newsletter using the link in the show description. The newsletter will not only link you to new episodes, but I share a small preview summary of all interviews. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a tip using the tip jar link. Proceeds will go to creating a better platform to share the stories of talented creatives with things like upgraded software, tech equipment, and will also go to helping out great causes. Thank you again for listening. I look forward to continuing to share with you my passion, telling the stories of amazing people. So long and be well.